It's Gareth from the iMoot team. On behalf of the iMoot team, I'd like to welcome Kristina Hoeppner and her presentation on Open Badges in Mahara and Moodle. Thank you much for your time, and obviously looking forward to a really good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in to the session this morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are calling in for iMoot this year. And it would be fantastic if you put into the chat whether you've already started using badges or exploring them, either in a formal or non-formal setting, just so that everyone in the room can get an idea of where you're coming from, and also see that we can then hopefully incorporate any of your questions. Just organizational-wise or logistics-wise, please feel free to ask questions at any point in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it as best as possible during the presentation, and so that we can answer questions then. But please also feel free to interrupt me if you want to grab the mic. So just unmute yourself and you can talk as well. And thanks to Gareth for introducing me and also for starting this session. It is really fantastic to have yet another iMoot and be able to talk with people across the world in one conference together. My name is Kristina and I live in Wellington, New Zealand, working for Catalyst IT, which is a Moodle partner and also a Mahara partner. And I'm a member of the core developer team of Mahara at Catalyst. And so we've, of course, have been keeping an eye on the Open Badges discussion that started when Mozilla Foundation and the MacArthur Foundation started exploring the ideas and also putting out a competition. Because we are in the business of learning management systems and also putting out an open source e-portfolio system with Mahara, we are very much interested in exploring new ways of credentialing and also showing skills and competencies and achievements in the portfolio. Thank you, Paul and Gareth, for putting in that you've already started experimenting with it. And so hopefully also with the use of the badges here at iMoot, you'll get a better idea of what can be done with them, where you might want to focus your attention exploring them further, and also whether you want to include them in your own practices. In today's session, we are going to look at both Moodle and Mahara, because it is a nice workflow of putting your badges that you've earned in Moodle into your Mahara e-portfolio in order to show them off also to others who don't have access to your Moodle site. So that's the plan for today, that we'll briefly look at what badges are in general, and then dive into how you can set up badges in Moodle and then also transfer them into Mahara so that you can display them there as well. Okay. So badges have been around for a very long time, but not so much in education. We rather know badges from Boy Scout, Girl Scout, or especially the gaming community. And so that's why when Open Badges was started and people started looking into it for educational purposes, of course also the gaming aspect was a great part. But now there's also quite a bit of exploration going on in terms of implementing it really also for coursework and so on. And so for me, badges aren't just nice little pictures that you can put on the website, but they are a representation of your skills, your competencies, and also your achievements. And of course, that also goes for games, because there you go to a new level, you achieved something, you've gained more skills or competencies to jump, or you've gained certain artifacts that you can then use on your journey. But the same also goes for education, and when we are in courses, we progress through our learning. We gain competencies, we learn how to do something so that our skill set is increased. And badges do not prescribe what they are representing, because that can just be one tiny thing, so just one skill or one step towards the end goal, or you could also credential an entire program or an entire study program or an entire course. So that's why, even though the badge itself, the physical representation of it, the image there, is always kind of the same size, it can hold a lot of different criteria. And that's why it is important that we actually also not just have an image to show us that we've earned a badge, but also a lot of metadata behind it, where we can then see why we have earned this badge. And so, where can you use badges in education? Badges can certainly be used in the formal learning context. That is where, though, a lot of educators are still having the most exploration done, and where policies can come into play that might go against using badges in classrooms, because they could collide with other coursework, with grades, and so schools and universities and so on, they are looking into how they can complement each other when badges can be issued, and also how to validate them and how to integrate them. So just to give you a few examples of where badges are already being used in more formal learning settings, or where they are being explored, you can for sure take a look at all the Mozilla badges that are the participating issuers. I'll put the link into the chat, and there you see non-formal and formal issuers. But for formal ones, there is, for example, the New York Department of Education, the New York City Department of Education, with their Ditch IT initiative. This initiative allows students to earn badges when they're in the pursuit of real-world skills to prepare them for their for life after school. So they are using it in a digital literacy program. Then we also have UC Davis, who's one of the thought leaders in the area of badging, with its Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems program, and there they are trying to validate experiential learning. And so they are not just looking into creating 1 or 2 badges, but what they call a badging system, so that it becomes very apparent for what you gain a badge, and also how it progresses over time, and how everything can work together, so that you, like with regular coursework, with grades and so on, can build from one badge to the next and build on top of each other, so that you eventually have an entire accreditation system there. At Beuth University of Applied Sciences in Germany, they are also exploring how to build a badging system for the university in order to credential skills and also competencies, and also in the end formal learning. Currently, the biggest area, though, where badges are being used, I would say, is the non-formal or the informal learning areas, because there it is oftentimes easier to work with badges, because there you do not have to worry about official credentialing, but you do allow your students and your learners in general to earn badges for skills or competencies they've gained, so that they have kind of a certificate of participation. In the past, in Moodle, we've always used the certificate module in order to give learners something into their hands, which tells them, yes, I've completed either a learning unit or a course, or I've participated in training. But of course, a crafty learner could alter that PDF file eventually and make something else out of it, and then put that into their resume. Whereas with badges, those are certified and make it easier to include metadata and also verify the evidence. So non-formal learning providers now explore badges to do just that, to have an easy means for their learners to be credentialed, to receive something into their hands which tells them that they have completed a training course, a unit, an internship, and so on, and allow them then to display all that electronically online. For example, in their own blogs, in an e-portfolio system, in a Moodle profile, or even on LinkedIn and elsewhere. So in terms of some examples for non-formal learning settings where badges are being used, there's, for example, the Pittsburgh City of Learning. That is a program that is going to start this year in the city of Pittsburgh, where they are going to offer free activities for their students, and they, upon completion, can then earn a badge. Last year, the biggest initiative that I'm aware of was the Chicago Summer of Learning, where again free activities were offered to students throughout the summer, so kind of like a summer program that they could participate in and then earn badges and see how they progress. This year there is going to be the Los Angeles Summer of Learning, similar to the Chicago one, and allowing students again to earn badges. In terms of a longer initiative, then there's the Mountain Lakes High School Online Academy, and that allows its students to earn badges for extra or co-curricular activities that they participate in, for example, with Moot providers. And so with the badges, their course completion is then recognized there. In a different area, and that's where we are coming back to iMoot, conferences now also oftentimes issue badges, like we have here at the iMoot some official ones, for example, for being an attendee, for being a presenter, or for tweeting, but also unofficial ones like the Mojito badge that Vinny created just yesterday, so maybe some of you already earned it. Others, you're very welcome to search for it here in iMoot. And use these badges instead of a certificate of attending, and thus also allow conference attendees to have an electronic representation of such a certificate. Another example is the EDUCAUSE annual meeting. That's where they also issue badges for presenters, for attendees, for board members, and so on. And so there are a lot of contexts these days where badges are being explored in non-formal, informal, and also formal learning settings, because they can add onto either paper certificates, or where you've never received a certificate, now you can earn a badge to have a certificate available that you can then also use online, because nowadays a lot of people just have a very heavy online presence, and so of course it is nice to be able to make those certificates available there as well, instead of just having to scan some PDF files in. But now let's take a quick look at what a badge actually looks like and what it consists of. The badge, what we see with the naked eye, is actually just an image. So that's what you see on the left side of the slide. However, it is not just a pretty image, but there's actually metadata embedded into the PNG file, so that it can then be read by a program that has the displayer functionality, so that you can embed evidence into it, or links to evidence, and really say why you earned this badge. So important parts of the anatomy of a badge then are the badge name, so that is usually the course name or an activity title, a description, why you have earned this badge, so that's where learning outcomes can come into play, or you can also put in for how many hours somebody participated in a training. And then you have the criteria for earning this badge, the issuer, so the person or the institution that made this badge available, and that you can then also contact if you have any questions regarding the evidence, or you'd actually need to look at the real evidence if it is behind a password setting, or if you just want to double check that you're dealing with the correct person, or also see what else they have done. Then you have links to the evidence itself, when the badge was issued, and then you can also have standards and tags depending on the badging program that you use. Moodle does not allow us to add tags or standards yet, but that might come in the future. Do you have any questions for the anatomy or earlier parts of the presentations? And please do use your mic if you want to speak, or put your text into the chat area. So badges are really coming into play, not just at universities or schools, but in particular, as I said, on the outside. But they can also be very useful for associations where you need to do re-accreditation in regular intervals so that your learners and members of the association can just very easily collect all their PD training certificates and publish them online. Yes, Paul, there's actually quite a lot in that image. And when we look at an image, we really just see the design part, but we don't see what is inside it. So it is similar to the XIM data that you have in photos these days, where you can also put a title in there, the description of a photo, you can put tags in, and also GPS data and so on. And so that is similar to this XIM data, that you have all this metadata in a badge. And that's what makes it so powerful, because you can just take an image, add all the data, and then you have really a rich certificate. And so in order to have a badge, there are always three parties involved. One is the issuer, so that's the person giving you the badge. Then you, the person earning the badge, you're the earner. And then you need a software or web application that can display your badge. Because if you do not have a special program for displaying the badge, you only see the image. You don't have access to the metadata easily. And that's where Mozilla comes in. And that's why we oftentimes also speak of Moodle as the issuer and the displayer of badges. Because again, in order to put all that metadata in, you need a program to do that for you. Because you only provide the image, you create that either on your computer or via badge generator. And that's all you need to do. Moodle takes care of the entire process of putting all that metadata in. And if you're a displayer, you need to have the functionality in order to extract that metadata from the image and show it. And that's the work that the Mozilla Foundation is doing with the badges. And we are always talking about open badges because it's an open framework, it's open standards, open APIs, so that other systems can also easily connect to it and become issuers or displayers. So now let's take a quick look at what the issuing side of things looks like. When we are in Moodle and you're in the course administration, you can issue badges. That is if the site administrator allowed course badges. Sometimes, especially if there is a policy in place where you don't really want your teachers to issue badges, or you don't want them to create their own badges, you could take that functionality away from them. But of course, right now, still being in the exploration phase, it would, you can set up your Moodle or a testing site to just issue badges also within a course and see how that works. So once you're in the course administration, then you see the badges menu item, and there you can manage your badges and you can add a new badge. And when you add a new badge, you first need to give it a name, then you give it a description, and that's where I would put in short description of the course or what the skill or competency entails that you are creating the badge, for which you are creating the badge. And because that is the important bit that you need to show off, and that gives an impression of why this badge was earned. As you can already see here from this text area though, there's no formatting possibilities. So do not try to be creative with putting paragraphs in or trying to use bullet points. It does not work. Everything will be munched up together in a paragraph, and you cannot really do any formatting in there. That's hopefully one aspect of the badging system that will be improved so that you can actually also work with formatting for nicely putting things together, so that in the end you get a digital representation of the badge, of the certificate, but on the other hand might even be able to print it out so that you could also file it away as paper if you needed to. The third very important part of the badge, because it is a visualization of course, is that you add an image. And you can create that image yourself on your computer, or you can use a generator for that. So that if you're not comfortable using a graphics program, then you can just go online and find generators. In the link list that I have in the presentation, I provide links to just 2 of them. There are many, many others out there that you could use to make your own badges. Now we've said a badge is not just about the information about the course, but of course when you look at a badge as a potential future employer, you also want to know who actually issued the badge. And that's what you put into the issuer details, the name. And again, you can choose what you want to put in there. So it can be the organization, or it can be just the trainer or facilitator, or your organization might even dictate what you put in there. And then you also put an email address in there so that a person looking at your badge could also contact you. And last but not least, you have a badge expiry date, which is also fantastic. Because if you set a fixed date or a relative date, so say 1 year after I've received the badge, it will expire, that's when you can really work with the badges also in the context of professional learning or inductions, for example. So if you have a health and safety course that all of your employees need to be recertified once a year, or a first aid course, you could use the expiry date, the relative expiry date here, and say, okay, after a year the badge expires, and when you don't have it anymore, you are not certified anymore. And so if somebody goes to your profile page in Moodle, for example, and doesn't see the first aid badge there anymore, they know, okay, they are not certified, they are not one of our first aiders. So that's a really nice way to work with the badge expiry date. And again, to automate things, that Moodle is very helpful in providing automation processes to make it easier to keep track of things like that. So that was the area where you can describe your badges. Now you give the criteria for why somebody earned this badge. And there you've got 3 possibilities. First, you can manually issue a badge by role. So you can say, okay, because I'm the training facilitator or because I'm the training manager, I can issue the badge. And then you can also say, especially if you click multiple persons here, whether all need to say, yes, this person earns the badge, or whether it doesn't matter whether you're the facilitator or the program coordinator to earn the badge. And then the other 2 options are course completion and activity completion. And so that is a very nice way of using activity completion or course completion, which has been available in Moodle since 2.0, in order to have badges issued automatically. And so when you're in a course, and here's just the example of the activity completion, when you're in a course, you see all the activities that have activity completion turned on. And so you can say which activities need to be completed in order to earn a specific badge. And you can also say by which date an activity needs to be completed so that the badge can be earned. So that is really nice flexibility for you to say when a badge is being issued, and as soon as somebody completes these criteria, will the badge be issued to them. So you may have seen that here also in the iMoot sessions, or in iMoot, For example, when you put in your Twitter handle, you immediately got a badge. And so there was nobody of the iMoot team sitting there and issuing them manually, but that was just done automatically because you've completed that activity and it was associated with a badge. And similarly to what we already saw on the previous screen for the roles, again, you can choose whether all selected activities must be completed or only certain activities or any of the activities in order to earn the badge. So you could, for example, also say somebody receives a badge after they've written 3 forum posts, or after they've written 15 forum posts, they get yet another badge. So you can really be very granular about issuing your badges. So that was the criteria, and now let's go on to the message. Because as you might have already seen in iMoot, you do get a notification about having earned a badge so that you actually know that you've completed something. And you can customize this message yourself, either directly on the system level in the language strings, or if you want to have a custom message for one course or for one badge, then you can do so. Just be careful with a couple of the links in here because they are just placeholders. So these are the links that are marked and encased with percentage signs. Please leave those in your message because then they'll be automatically replaced with the badge name and the link to the actual badge, and you don't have to put those in yourself. So once you're done with that, and you have not turned on automatic issuing of badges, you can award your badge to people. So that is usually when you have turned on the using the role for issuing badges, and then you have your regular Moodle screen where you move people from the right-hand side into the left one in order to award them a badge. Just be very careful here on this screen, there is no undo button. As soon as people are on the left-hand side, they will have received the notification and you cannot take the badge away from them anymore. So before you award badges and enable a badge, please do make sure that there are no spelling errors in there or that all your criteria are correct, because once you've issued a badge to a person, it cannot be undone. That's the only tricky bit maybe, because oftentimes we do have some undo options, but not in this case. However, what can happen is that learners themselves can opt not to show certain badges on their profile page. So when you then are in Moodle and you've awarded your badge to a learner, the badge is oftentimes automatically displayed on their profile page so that you can then see that directly. And as just mentioned, I as learner can decide which badges I want to show on my profile or which badges I do not want to show. So this is issuing badges in Moodle and also displaying them directly in Moodle. But now the important part is also, or the interesting part on top of that is, how do you actually get your badge into another system such as Mahara, into an e-portfolio where you want to display the badges in your portfolio for employment purposes or also just to show off your skills. And yes, Gareth, Test User comes in really handy with this functionality, testing out your badges, whether they work, just to make sure that everything is set up properly. So in order to display a badge somewhere else in a different system, you do need to put it into the Mozilla backpack. The backpack is a place where you can store all your badges and then assemble them in whichever way you want. And so when you've set up an account with a Mozilla backpack, you see all your badges or all your recent badges in there, and then you can create collections. These collections allow you to conglomerate certain badges together, to put certain badges together in order to show them off properly. and also in a specific context that you want. Because you may earn badges for coursework, conference participation, and just some test badges or fun badges, so you may not always want to display them all. And so when you put them into collections, you can say, okay, here are all my badges for one conference or for conference participation in general. So it's very easy per drag and drop to drop your badges into a new collection, and you can also create as many collections as you want. Once you've created your collection, you need to make sure that you make it public, because only when it's public can a displayer then also show it at the moment. Or if you want to show off your badges on a site that is not yet a displayer of badges, you can just share the link to it on that site, and that's how you would do it for LinkedIn, for example. So now once you've made collections for your badges, you can go back into Moodle, go back to your profile and into the badge preferences, where you can connect to your Mozilla backpack, and that allows you then to import your collections that you have and decide which ones you want to display on your profile page. And you can choose one or as many collections as you want, but you see here also that they need to be public collections. So once you've made all those settings, your Moodle profile page can look different. So on top we still have the course badges that I've earned, but at the bottom I decided to show off all my iMoot conference badges that I've earned so far from last year and then also this year. And when you click on one of these images, you will get to see a screen with all the badge criteria. And that's why we did all the work of putting the name, the badge description, and the evidence in, so that we do not just have a nice image, but also know why we've actually earned this badge and what is behind it. Because you also need to know that the badge image itself is usually a maximum of 90 by 90 pixel. So you cannot really put a lot in that image if you still want people to read it. And that's why this metadata is also so important, so that you can really have more text in there, linked to the evidence, linked to the criteria, and also see whether that badge ever expires or not. So that was displaying your badges in Moodle. But we've also said we are going to look at how you can do it in Mahara. In Mahara, we have two plugins. Currently, there is no core functionality available yet for displaying badges or even issuing badges. But there are two plugins available that were created by Eric Rosell, and he's made them open source so that everyone can test them and also give feedback and use in their instances. The first plugin that we are going to look at is the Open Badges Displayer plugin. And that allows you to have an Open Badges block type in your page when you want to edit a Mahara page and pull that into your portfolio as you would normally do with other blocks. And so once you've done that and you configured your backpack so that, or you configured your block so that you can connect to your backpack and you logged into your backpack, you will also see the public collections that you've created in order to then select them and display them. And then once you display your page, you can view your badges. This plugin only allows you to select one collection at a time. So if you want to add your conference badges from all conferences, you could create one collection which has all badges in there, or you could leave them in the separate collections and therefore show which badges you've earned for which conference. The second plugin that we have available is the Open Badge Factory plugin. And that plugin allows you to actually issue badges from within Mahara. Currently, this work is still very much in progress because the Open Badge Factory itself is only in beta status, so they are all trialing things out now. And therefore, there is still quite a bit of work done in order to make the workflow easier and then also see how it can be displayed in Mahara. But just to give you an idea of what the workflow is in general, here we are in the Open Badge Factory under the Creator tools. And creating a badge in the Open Badge Factory works similarly to what you do in Moodle, because first you need to set up your badge with the name, the image, and the criteria, and then you can decide how you want to issue it. So you could directly actually issue badges from the Open Badge Factory, but we are going to look at how you would do that in Mahara. So if you install the Open Badge Factory plugin into Mahara, you will be able to see badges in groups. Currently, the only place where you can issue badges would be in groups, so nowhere else. So if you want to issue to somebody, they would need to be a member of a group. And then you can select the badge that you want to issue, and similarly to Moodle, you decide which group member shall receive the badge, and then move those, in our case, from the left to the right-hand side. And again, you can also put an expiry date on there so that you can just say until when this badge is valid. In our case, in Mahara's case, the issuing works slightly different because you need to click the button Issue Badge before somebody can receive it. Therefore, you could double check your list of recipients whether you've selected all correct ones before the badge is actually issued. So as mentioned, this plugin is still very much in development work, so everything might look different at some point once more work has been done, but it is already a very nice way of issuing badges, trialing it out, how it would work in the ePortfolio context, and see what you can do with it. There's currently also no automated way of issuing the badges, so all the time you would be doing it manually, but that again is something that can change in the future. So here I've now got a list of links, definitely not an exhaustive list of links for Open Badges, but just some to whet your appetite and get you into other areas from where you can then explore badges further. So first, of course, the official Open Badges website, where you also find heaps of resources that you can use yourself when you want to talk about Open Badges at your school, university, or organization. So they also have very nice presentations there that you can repurpose and show off what is possible with badges. If you want to keep up to date in what's going on in the world of Open Badges, you can subscribe to the blog. And the important part in order to actually display badges in another system would be the Mozilla Backpack. That works with with Persona, and you can use your Persona login elsewhere as well. For example, also on Mahara. If you have not yet signed up to our community hub at mahara.org, you can use your Persona login to easily create an account. Then there's a really nice short article about why you would actually be wanting to use badges. And that article also gives you some ideas of how you can approach your organization or how you can introduce your badges, how it can be in a non-threatening way if there are policy questions, and just some ideas of what people have already done. The hashtag bibliography on digital badges is very, very large already. And so that is a fantastic resource if you are in the market for doing your research or also for pulling out some more references and arguments for using digital badges in education. Then we've got the Moodle documentation and also links to the two Mahara plugins that I briefly described. And the Second last one is the Badge Design Canvas, which is an awesome resource for thinking about creating badges. So they have a template available that you can print out in order to set up your badge workflow, see why you're issuing the badge, who should be involved, what the design should look like, and so on. So really be helping you in the brainstorming aspect of your badges so that you have a very good plan in why you want to use them and how they also should look when you want to issue them. And last but not least, just 2 examples of badge generators that can help you to issue badges easily. And now we have still almost 15 minutes left for questions, if you have any. And please feel free to either put them into the chat or also grab the mic and just use the audio. Thank you.